The Spaniards found themselves trapped in a battle they would spend the night fighting beneath a darkened sky. The Aztecs, transforming every bridge and narrow passage into a deadly field, blocked every movement of the Spanish army. As the rain struck their bodies, the muskets' fire became ineffective, their armor grew heavier, and their vision blurred. Spears flew through the air, obsidian blades gleamed, and with every step, more soldiers fell to the ground. The dreadful screams of war and the chaos in the darkness turned Cortés and his soldiers' strategies upside down, and the hope of retreating was nearly extinguished. Desperation, like a poisonous breath, spread in every corner, turning each inch of earth into a slow, agonizing death rattle. In 1519, led by Hernán Cortés, the Spaniards arrived on the shores of Mexico with the permission of Diego Velázquez, the governor of Cuba. Their goal was to discover new lands and find gold. However, Cortés had a larger ambition: to conquer the Aztec Empire, the most powerful state in the region. After establishing a small colony in Veracruz, he began making contact with local tribes to strengthen his army. Enemy tribes of the Aztecs, such as the Tlaxcalans, agreed to fight alongside the Spaniards. In November 1519, Cortés arrived at the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, where he was ceremoniously welcomed by Moctezuma. The Aztecs may have initially believed the Spaniards were emissaries of the god Quetzalcoatl, but they soon realized the truth. Upon noticing the gold and wealth within the city, the Spaniards took Moctezuma hostage, effectively taking control of Tenochtitlan. However, the Aztecs began to grow suspicious of the foreigners' intentions. The Spaniards demonstrated their power by committing a massacre in the Aztec-allied city of Cholula. This event fueled immense anger among the Aztec people. As tensions in Tenochtitlan grew, Pedro de Alvarado, who was in charge of the main Spanish forces while Cortés was away, massacred hundreds of Aztecs during a temple ceremony. This act of violence led to a full-scale uprising in the city. Cortés quickly returned to rectify Alvarado's mistake, but by then, the Aztecs had turned completely hostile toward the Spaniards. Moctezuma was brought before the people in an attempt to calm the rebellion, but the Aztecs stoned him to death. The Spaniards' situation rapidly deteriorated. The Aztecs blocked all escape routes, effectively laying siege to Tenochtitlan. Food and water supplies dwindled, and reinforcements could not reach them. Cortés saw only one option: a nighttime retreat. In June 1520, Cortés and his men found themselves in a dire situation in Tenochtitlan. The Aztecs had gained full control of the city and had sealed off all escape routes for the Spaniards. After Moctezuma's death, the growing rebellion and anger among the people of Tenochtitlan posed a major threat to the Spanish forces. The locals were increasingly hostile, limiting the Spaniards' freedom of movement. Any new supplies of food and water entering the city were intercepted by the Aztecs. The Spaniards found themselves unable to rely on even their native allies for support. As the siege in the city grew more intense, the Spaniards battled hunger and thirst. The heat made their armor even more unbearable, and after days of constant tension, morale among the soldiers began to plummet. The warriors' endurance was rapidly diminishing, and the combination of fear and exhaustion created an escalating sense of danger. Amid these challenges, Cortés started to consider escape plans as a worst-case scenario. The Aztecs were determined to wipe out the Spanish presence and set traps at every corner, slowly tightening the noose around their enemies. Cortés decided to seize the opportunity of a dark night to rectify their dire situation. In order not to worsen their besieged position, the only remaining option was to retreat in secret. However, this plan came with great risks. Leaving Tenochtitlan would inevitably provoke the full wrath of the Aztecs. At best, Cortés hoped they could quietly slip out of the city under the cover of darkness. Everyone had to move calmly and swiftly, disappearing into the night. Stealth was everything. Yet none of this meant that the Aztecs were unprepared. Cortés and his soldiers began their retreat under the cover of darkness, but their escape quickly turned into an unexpected catastrophe. The Aztecs realized the Spaniards were withdrawing and immediately launched a counterattack. In no time, warriors ambushed the fleeing Spaniards, unleashing relentless assaults. As they moved through the city, the exhausted and weakened soldiers started to fall. The weight of their armor, the treacherous paths shrouded in darkness, and the relentless Aztec attacks made Cortés's escape nearly impossible. Gold and treasures lost their meaning. Survival had become the only thing that mattered. Chaos erupted with the first light of dawn, following the Spaniards' secret nighttime escape. The moment the Aztecs realized their enemy was retreating, they sprang into action. The narrow streets of Tenochtitlan turned into a battleground, where Spaniards desperately tried to flee, while soldiers on the bridges fought for their lives against relentless Aztec attacks. The Spaniards' muskets had become largely ineffective due to the heavy rain. Struggling to fire in the downpour, their firearms failed them, while traditional weapons remained as deadly as ever. Aztec warriors wielded their obsidian-bladed macuahuitls with terrifying efficiency, cutting down unarmored Spanish soldiers with ease. Each strike was deadly. The macuahuitls, lined with razor-sharp obsidian shards, slashed through flesh with terrifying speed, their blood-soaked arms swinging relentlessly. This battle revealed the sheer brutality of Aztec close combat skills and the fearsome nature of their weapons. Unarmored Spaniards fell instantly under the relentless blows, with little chance to retreat or fight back. As the Spaniards fought desperately, they also struggled under the immense weight of their armor. While it offered protection, it became a crushing burden in the thick mud, making every step a struggle. The gold, treasure, and loot they carried only added to their load, slowing them down even further. The bridges, already under strain, groaned under the pressure of panicked soldiers. Sensing their enemy's weakness, the Aztecs struck with precision, destroying the bridges one by one, cutting off any chance of escape. The collapse of the bridge marked the beginning of a catastrophe for the Spaniards. Weighed down by their armor and gold, many soldiers plunged into the water, drowning in the thick mud. Their retreat turned into chaos. The freezing water, the depth of the sludge, and the crushing weight of their equipment slowed them to a crawl. Those who managed to escape the sinking mass found themselves at the mercy of the Aztecs, who slaughtered them mercilessly. Survivors desperately scrambled for their lives, but many disappeared beneath the river's depths. The escape was no longer just a retreat. It was complete physical and psychological collapse. The Spanish retreat had already begun. Cortés, surrounded by a pile of corpses in front of him and relentless Aztec warriors pressing from behind, struggled to push his men forward. But the torrential rain had rendered firearms and shields useless, stripping the Spaniards of their greatest advantage. From the very start of the escape, scattered Spanish units were cut down on nearly every bridge. As time passed, lifeless bodies floated in the lake, increasing the number of drowned soldiers. In the background, the Aztecs kept driving them into the water. Each fallen Spaniard was another victory for the defenders of Tenochtitlan. The footsteps of the retreating Spanish soldiers quickened as they plunged deeper into the darkened wilderness. The chaotic clashes had faded, but the night was still marked by the blood-stained echoes of battle. Fear and desperation weighed heavy with every step, their presence almost tangible. Traps had been set, yet the Aztecs had not abandoned their relentless pursuit. Those who dared to look back saw not only the bodies of their fallen comrades, but also the looming specter of death itself, Aztec warriors emerging from the shadows, ready to claim more lives. Amidst the chaos, Cortés struggled to rally his exhausted and broken soldiers, still clinging to a desperate hope for resistance. Yet commanding a retreating army was impossible. Each man had only one path ahead: loneliness, darkness, and a cold escape. As the remnants of his force scattered into the night, a deep sense of helplessness settled over him. There was no hope left for those still standing. He thought it was all over. With his mind clouded and his eyes brimming with tears, he collapsed beneath a tree, unable to contain the weight of his grief. That night, the Aztecs had won. But the cost of Cortés's campaign was painfully clear. The dance of death and devastation awaited the dawn. By the end of the night, the streets of Tenochtitlan were littered with the drowned bodies of Spanish soldiers and their Tlaxcalan allies, remnants of a crushing Aztec victory. Yet, for the Aztecs, the euphoria of triumph was fleeting. Within hours, as dawn approached, Cortés and his surviving forces began to regroup. After a night of turmoil, these survivors were already preparing for a renewed assault. Though the Aztecs had won this battle, they were only at the beginning of a much greater war. This time, their enemies would return, not as a fleeing force, but as a far stronger and more determined army. By late 1520, the Spanish forces found themselves under intense siege in Tenochtitlan. Following the death of Moctezuma, the Aztecs had reclaimed control of the city and blocked all escape routes. Facing a dire situation, Hernán Cortés decided to secretly lead his army out of the city under the cover of night. However, events unfolded in a drastically different manner than he had planned. Under the cover of darkness, Cortés and his men found themselves trapped by the relentless Aztec siege. The rain rendered their firearms ineffective, and the heavily armored Spanish soldiers struggled under the weight of their gear. Aztec warriors, armed with obsidian blades and spears, engaged in close combat on the narrow bridges. As the bridges collapsed, many Spanish soldiers met their end in the chaos that followed. Despite their efforts to retreat, the few surviving Spanish soldiers fled into the depths of the forest. The Aztecs pushed the bodies of the fallen enemies into the water, declaring their victory. After the disaster, Cortés, utterly broken, sank to his knees beneath a tree, unable to hold back his tears. Though the Aztecs had claimed a significant victory that night, it was not the end of the war. La Noche Triste marked a turning point where the Spaniards suffered immense losses, but the victory was far from certain. After the storm, the next major conflict loomed. While the Aztecs seemed to have won, Hernán Cortés and his forces would regroup and lay siege to Tenochtitlan once more. By the end of this saga, the struggle would continue for both sides. If you'd like to learn more details about these historical conflicts, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, share it, and support us with your comments. Stay tuned for more epic battles and historical events coming your way.